2007. Okay, let's get into it. Hello, welcome to today's lecture. Today, I would like to take you through a very unhinged, because my memory is bad, recap of Spygate. It feels good to be standing, it feels good to have props. And that's what I want to say that's positive today. Downsides for today. These were all supposed to be in color, which is why we now have everything's names written on them. Great! Turns out the printer in my complex doesn't do color. It only does black and white. And I'm not going somewhere else to pay £10 to print this many photos. Okay? Okay. Let's just get right into it. The year. It is 2007. The housing crisis has yet to happen. One Direction has not formed. Lewis Hamilton, relatively new on the grid. Fernando Alonso, still on the grid in his first time round. That's where we're at. Okay? Okay. Our location that causes all of these following events to transpire, technically, Italy. However, the instigating incident, Surrey, England. Specifically, Woking, in the town near where McLaren has their technology center, which will be a fact that is relevant later. Our hero of this story, Gary. What is Gary's last name? Let me get my notes. Fantastic book, by the way. Really fun, really well written. I'm gonna go with Monteith. Mr. Monteith. I know they're really dark. I'll flash the photo on screen as I bring them up the first time. Gary Monteith. I'm going with Monteith. It is spelled Monteith. He works at a copy shop. That's Gary's job. That's what Gary does. Good for Gary. A woman, unnamed at this time, pretend you don't see that, comes in. Woman comes in with a big old dossier of papers. 780 pages to be exact. And she gives them to Gary and goes, hey, can you put these on like 2 CDs for me? My husband needs them for work or whatever. Right. And Gary goes, sure, whatever, just thinking it's normal little documents. However, to his surprise, as he's thumbing through them, because he obviously needs to put them like on a scanner or something to make them CDs, he notices a logo of a racing horse. The Scuderia Ferrari logo. Now, Gary's a big fan of the Formula One. Specifically, Gary's a big fan of Ferrari. And he goes, this is interesting. These are car plans. Now, why would a woman like this in Woking have car plans? As I've mentioned earlier, McLaren Technology Center just down the road. But why would they have the Scuderia's car plans? So he decides to Google the woman. Because obviously he has her name. She has to come pick the stuff up, right? Her name is Trudy. Last name Coughlin. Upon Googling, because it's 2007, he finds out her husband is none other than Mike Coughlin, head designer for McLaren Racing. Right? Right. Let me read out his actual job. He's the chief designer for McLaren Racing. So he goes even further. Let me just, before I put Mike off the wall. On Google, Gary keeps going, and he goes, I don't think she should have these documents. They're Scuderia Ferrari documents. Her husband works for McLaren, right? Smart guy, Gary. And he goes, let me just Google it up and see if I can find Stefano Domicelli's email. Because he does, because it's 2007 and everything's on Google, and no one knows about internet safety yet. God bless the early 2000s for this. And Gary decides to email Stefano. That's what he does with the rest of his day. And he goes, hold on, I've got a quote in this book here. Dear Mr. Domicelli, my name is Gary Monteith. And you don't know me, but I'm a big Ferrari fan, and there's something I thought you'd like to know. And then he proceeds to tell him about the documents and who came in to copy them and da-da-da-da-da-da. Right? Now, this is where we get to perhaps the most incredible part of this story. Not that it's 2007 he was able to find head of Ferrari's email on Google. No. I say head of Ferrari. He's the sporting director. Also, I am so sorry if my voice starts cutting in and out. It is allergy season. So not the most important thing is not that they could find at the time sporting director Ferrari, soon to be head of the FIA's email, just online. The insane thing is that Stefano saw the email. He saw it. He read the email, and you know what this man did? Forwarded it to Ferrari security to look into. But as that concludes, and before we get into all the really boring legal stuff that happens later, I'd like to take you on a short journey into the past, where we talk about why Trudy had these documents. I need to switch to my other notes on my laptop. I have 2 sets of notes. So for this section, I want you to know there's going to be a couple names that come up that I don't have pictures for. And that's okay, because generally we're just going to refer to them as like McLaren or Ferrari. And we're just going to do it that way instead of me having to print off photos for people who are relevant for like 2 lines of this story. And moving on. So this thing with Gary and Trudy, 2007. I think it's about July, if you want a time of year. We're going to now go back all the way to the year 2000, right? And this now, we're talking about Ferrari. So from 2000 to 2004, Ferrari was like super dominant in their racing. Michael Schumacher won 5 straight World Championships. However, this came to an end in 2006, at the end of the year when Michael announced he was retiring, and Braun, who had been the technical director, also announced he would be taking a sabbatical. Nigel wants to be technical director, but nobody else at Ferrari wants Nigel to be technical director. And there's a few reasons why. But what was holding him back? 1, no engineering degree. 2, he's British. Scuderia Ferrari, notoriously very like Italian team. We're very Italian, right? They like want people to speak Italian. Everyone who works for them must speak Italian, all that. So Nigel gets overlooked for Mario, whose last name I don't remember at the minute, if I'm being completely honest. And he feels it's just because 1, Mario's Italian, and 2, Mario has an engineering degree. Something Nigel doesn't have, despite having spent 15 years next to Braun at the top in the team. Oh, I also forgot to mention, Nigel, while he was chief mechanic, seen as a bit of a tyrant, not very nice, and at one point was told, you will always be a number 2, you will never be number 1. Like, you're never going to be good enough to be number 1 in this team. So I'm not saying we should be sympathetic to his cause and be like, well, he was bullied. He was not the nicest man. So what does he do? Because he's so unhappy, he speaks out against Ferrari. Something that historically, not a great move. Prost got fired for it pretty immediately. But he basically said, I'm really unhappy with the team. I'm thinking about taking a year away. Right. And so after this, he gets approved to move into a role that is no longer attending race meetings and just doing a bit less. But this angers the rest of Ferrari's team because they feel he's very anti-Ferrari. So they kind of make him feel like more of an outsider, which then leads us to Nigel just being really, really mad the whole time. So, moving forward to May of 2007. So we're caught-ish back up. May of 2007. Ferrari mechanics find a white powder around the car. They go back, they check the footage, and they see who? Nigel, loitering around same said car earlier in the day. So they stop him, they search him, and they find a matching white powder on him. And when I say white powder on the car, like near the gas tank, like in a place it shouldn't be, right? he calls this like a smear campaign, a blatant way to try to get him to leave the team after speaking out against Ferrari, right? After they find the powder in his pockets, they also raid his home. They even find more matching powder. Nigel says it's all been planted. This is a dirty tricks campaign. Basically, because Ferrari did not fire him, he believes they are trying to smear his reputation so much that he cannot get hired anywhere else, which is important. This is not the only raid that will be done on his home. So now we get to Mike. Mike Coughlin has been the chief designer basically at McLaren since about 2002. Now him and Nigel knew each other prior. F1's kind of a small world, you kind of know everybody, especially when you start getting that high up. But they already know each other. But in 2002, he gets the job at McLaren. He's chief designer. He works with like Adrian Newey, all that, right? So we're winding back to about February, again, 2007, after we've been introduced to Mike here. We have phone calls starting to happen between Nigel and Mike, where Nigel's basically just venting about what's happening at Ferrari. These also turn into emails, and eventually through one of the emails, Nigel sends over details about a piece of Ferrari bodywork that Mike then shares with the entire McLaren team. Well, not the entire McLaren team, the design team. So after he shared that piece about the bodywork, more emails were exchanged, mostly about how the Ferrari team worked, not so much about car information. Eventually, Coughlin grew a bit like, maybe we shouldn't be doing this, like, don't contact me anymore. And had McLaren's IT team block Nigel. No more emails, Nigel, so sorry. But only on his Ferrari account, let's be clear. He could still privately email him. The weirder thing is that after he blocked him on email, right, Mike flies to Spain to speak with Nigel to basically tell him to stop contacting him. During this trip, however, after they meet, have lunch, and they go back to the airport, Nigel hands Mike the documents, all 780 pages of these documents that he had downloaded from team files and printed off himself. So Mike let his curiosity get the better of him, he claims, and he flips through it on the ride to the airport and takes it home with him. So when Mike gets home, he hands all the documents over to managing director Jonathan Neely, who takes one look at them and goes, God, you're an idiot, just get rid of these, we shouldn't have these. Because he knows what this is, and he knows what this investigation will become. The week after Monaco, about June 1st of 2007, Nigel and Mike meet with Honda. Now they're talking with Honda about basically becoming a team, with Mike being a chief designer and Nigel being the technical director. However, even though Honda was open to the deal, about a couple weeks later, following days, same week-ish, we'll go following days. And the following days, news breaks about the white powder incident, causing Honda to kind of cut them off. And then, just a few days after that, Trudy walks into Gary's shop down in Surrey. Oh my gosh, I completely forgot to mention that after Trudy picked up her CDs, she shredded and burned all the documents so they wouldn't be around. Basically, what happens is pretty much within the week of Gary sending his email, the FIA announces that, not the FIA, Ferrari decides they're going to seek litigation in a British court against McLaren, because if they do so, they can obtain warrants to basically search people's homes, specifically Mike's homes. Not homes, home. So basically, after Mike's home gets raided, Ron, team director of McLaren, basically goes, I'm gonna fire you, but like, don't talk about it. So he discreetly fires Mike. And now, unfortunately for Ron, he has to answer for all of McLaren in court. And I'll be honest, it doesn't go well for Ron. The rest of this is just really kind of boring legal stuff, so I'm going to really breeze through it. But Ron has to go answer in court for McLaren, and Ron doesn't do that well. He's trying to sit there and convince the court, and later the FIA, governing body, that Mike and maybe a few other people on the team were the only people who have ever seen these documents. Ron himself had no idea about it, which, as we can tell and know, is the truth. And that none of his other employees, none of his drivers knew anything about these documents. It was all Mike and Nigel. And that defense went okay for him. It wasn't fabulous, if we're being honest. And the whole legal battle ended in McLaren being fined $100 million for this. It's a record. I think they've only paid like 3 or 30 or something with a 3. They've not paid all of it. I don't think they're ever going to actually have to pay all of it. The FIA, not exactly doing much here. But that is a very broken rundown of Spygate and what happened. And that is actually just the first half of Spygate. Because I think within the year or within the same season, there were other issues that they also had. But these ones concerned drivers. This one was completely separate. I am realizing I might have had too many pictures. I don't think Ron and the FIA needed pictures, but it is what it is. It's nice to have Ron represented as like another voice from McLaren here. But yeah, basically it boils down to man really unhappy about how his job is going, and he decides to help another team cheat. So that is my breakdown of the Spygate situation. I hope you all enjoyed. I hope you had a good time. I hope the photos weren't too dark. I hope this wasn't too woo for you. Yeah, this is one I wanted to make for a while. And maybe one day I'll make an even longer, more detailed, updated version of it. Because I could go so much more into the weeds about the legal battle between like even just Stefano and Ron, and how they kind of fought with each other through lawyers, and then like Ferrari McLaren's whole thing, and how the FIA really got involved. They're really just here to be kind of like a God's court figure, to be honest, on my board. But that is all I have for today. As always, please remember to do your homework by liking, commenting, and subscribing. And with that, I will see you next time. Bye-bye!